In the world of Indonesian politics, not many appointments caused such a stir as Purbaya Yudhi Sadewa becoming the Minister of Finance. On September 8, 2025, President Prabowo Subianto picked the 61-year-old expert to take over from Sri Mulyani Indrawati, an economist respected all over the world. Purbaya, who used to be the head of the Deposit Insurance Agency (LPS), suddenly became a national focus. Unlike the person before him, Purbaya wasn't a political insider. He's an engineer and finance expert from Purdue University, known for working behind the scenes since 2010. His time at LPS was marked by quiet skill, not public showing off. The timing of his appointment was very important. Indonesia was facing protests because of rising living costs, and people wanted real change. Choosing Purbaya showed a break from the usual way of doing things, a step towards quick and clear action. President Prabowo needed a minister ready to carry out an ambitious plan for growth, and Purbaya's technical skills and willingness to challenge the rules made him a great fit. His quick rise from an administrator to the main financial architect is a story about political timing and taking smart risks. Purbaya's appointment marks the start of a bold, and possibly risky, new chapter for Indonesia's finances. What made Purbaya stand out wasn't just his policies, it was his voice. He ditched the fancy economic words and spoke in plain language, making finance easy to understand for everyday Indonesians. His straightforward, sometimes challenging way of speaking really connected with a public tired of political nonsense. Purbaya presented economic policy as a moral duty, not just a game of numbers. He used easy-to-grasp comparisons, like comparing the country's budget to a family's finances, to explain complex issues. This approach has earned him wide recognition and built strong support from the people. Unlike those who came before him, he aimed to build trust with the people, not just calm the markets. Purbaya has changed the role of the finance minister into a public economic advocate. One of Purbaya's first big moves was to go after Indonesia's emergency fund. That's $27 billion that Sri Mulyani had saved up as a financial cushion. To Purbaya, this was money just sitting there, not being used. So he quickly started to open up these reserves to pump money straight into the economy. Half of that money, over $13 billion, went to state-owned banks to boost lending and kickstart growth. Purbaya argued that money sitting in government accounts wasn't helping anyone. Putting it into circulation would create jobs and help reach the government's ambitious 8% GDP growth target. This was a huge shift from careful saving to aggressive spending to get things moving. He brushed off worries about the fund getting smaller, insisting it was necessary to pay for President Prabowo's expensive social programs. The emergency fund became a direct source for things like free meals, village cooperatives, and affordable housing. Purbaya made it clear he planned to use the entire $27 billion to push the government's agenda forward. This marked a fundamental change in how the country handled its money, moving from being stable and saving to spending and boosting the economy. It's a big gamble. If it works, Purbaya will be seen as a genius. But if it leads to rising prices and an empty treasury, the consequences could be really bad. The country is watching to see if this bold move pays off. Purbaya's approach has completely changed the rules for Indonesia's economy. The change from Sri Mulyani to Purbaya was a big policy shift. Sri Mulyani was all about being careful with money, keeping deficits low, managing debt well, and having strong savings. International investors saw her as someone who kept things stable. Purbaya, on the other hand, pushed for a big plan to grow the economy, saying that being too careful with money had held Indonesia back. He questioned why there needed to be a 3% limit on how much money the government could spend more than it took in. He saw extra money as fuel for growth, not just a safety net. His first budget update increased spending and pushed the deficit to 2.68% of the country's total money earned, getting close to the legal limit. Purbaya wasn't worried about the national debt, saying it was manageable and needed for the country to develop. Sri Mulyani leaving her job was a clear break from the past, and it was celebrated by those who wanted quicker action. This change has reshaped how people talk about Indonesia's economic future, bringing both excitement and worry. The country is now entering a new time, one defined by taking chances and making quick changes. Purbaya's bold policies have shaken investors both at home and abroad. His big spending approach, using up reserves and increasing the deficit, has worried international investors and credit rating agencies. Since he was appointed, foreign investors have pulled out $187.6 million from Indonesian government bonds, making Indonesia the only major Southeast Asian market with money leaving in 2025. This outflow of money shows a lack of trust and puts pressure on the government's finances. Investors are worried about the possible removal of the 3% deficit limit, which has been a key safety net since the Asian financial crisis. Purbaya's aggressive tone towards critics hasn't done much to calm the markets, even though it's been well received at home. Credit growth is slowing down despite more money being put into the economy, with critics saying the real problem is a lack of trust. For now, investor worries remain high as Indonesia's economic direction changes. Purbaya's time in office has been marked by bold and often controversial statements. He famously called the IMF's GDP forecasts stupid, signaling a defiance towards international bodies. He wasn't afraid to openly criticize other ministries, giving the impression of internal conflict. Yet, his actions have matched his words. He's launched crackdowns on corruption, illegal mining, and tax evasion, targeting the wealthiest tax dodgers, and has recovered billions. This tough approach has been popular with the public, who see it as long overdue accountability. Purbaya has also played a direct role in renegotiating major debts, such as the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed train project with China. Whether criticizing the IMF or pursuing tax dodgers, he has established himself as a minister of action. His outspoken style is reshaping Indonesia's political and economic landscape. Purbaya's unfiltered approach is both his trademark and his risk. Even though investors were worried, Purbaya's popularity with the public shot up. A poll in November 2025 showed him as the third best performing minister, with an approval rating of 84.1%. That's amazing for a finance minister. The media was buzzing with his direct statements and bold promises, making him a household name. His supporters saw him as a hero for the people, while critics saw him as a reckless gambler. His focus on real benefits, like free meals and better roads, really connected with everyday Indonesians. This public support gave Purbaya and the government the political power to push their big plans forward. His popularity acted like a shield against criticism from experts and doubts from the market. The government's message worked. People felt heard and saw action. For now, what the public thought was more important than the careful advice of economists. Purbaya's leadership has started a big national talk. Should Indonesia put its people's immediate growth first or keep global investors happy? Supporters say that spending a lot of money and having bigger deficits are needed investments for the country's future, which will eventually fix poverty and inequality. They see Purbaya as a true patriot, putting the needs of his people before what other countries think. Critics, like many economists and investors, warn that ignoring careful money management could make people lose trust, cause money to leave the country quickly, and risk high prices. They argue that being trusted by the world is super important for getting investments and keeping the money stable. The fear is that getting rid of financial safety nets could undo the stability that took many years to build. At the heart of the debate, can Indonesia grow steadily without the trust of the global market? The answer will shape the country's economic future. The stakes have never been this high. Purbaya's bold ideas marked a turning point for Indonesia. This plan, where the government leads the way for the people, could bring fast development and wealth for everyone. But there are real dangers. If all this big spending doesn't lead to lasting growth, Indonesia could end up with more debt, rising prices, and less money saved up. The first test will come when the economic numbers for the end of 2025 are released. For now, many people in Indonesia are benefiting from the new programs and spending. The big question for the future is whether this will lead to long-term wealth or an economic crisis. Purbaya's time in office will decide Indonesia's economic future. He has challenged the usual way of doing things and made a big gamble on the government spending a lot of money. The world is watching. Will he be remembered as a smart leader or as a minister who risked the country's stability? The outcome will shape Indonesia's destiny for many years to come.